Hello everyone. I think you all are doing very well, and this is third month of 2026 started. So I thought I would just tell about the books I have read in past 2 months, than telling all about the books at the end of the year. So here are the books I read. So like I mentioned last time, I finished the book. The Dictionary of Lost Words by Pip Williams. Then I also finished three books. One is The Grandest of Our Lives, Eye to Eye with Whales. Another one is Bruna and Her Sisters in the Sleeping City. Then another one is Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit. So we will go through one by one through all of the books. So first book was the Dictionary of Lost Words by Pip Williams, and this book I don't know why I ordered it. Usually before I order a book, I'm very skeptical about it because I want to have books that are very special to me, and I ordered it anyway, and I liked it so much. So this is the story of Esme. So Esme grew up among a group of lexicographers who are working on the Oxford English Dictionary. So if we talk about Pip Williams, she is from Australia, and she has done extensive research on the Oxford English Dictionary archives, and this is her first book on that. She has another book that is the Bookbinder from Jericho. Yeah, I think it's Jericho. So that is her second book that came out in 2023, and this book came out in 2020. And so there is the scriptorium, and Esme's dad, whom she called Da as a lovely expression, he works in the scriptorium. So she grew up basically among them because her mother died when she was born, and her father is raising her alone. So most of the time when he goes for work, she's just there. And usually under the table of all these people, all these lexicographers who are working on dictionaries, collecting words, sorting them, putting them in the dictionary. So by the time she grew up, like as a toddler, they have already published the first volume, that is I think A to H. So that is done, and then the later works happens. So initially people are very skeptical about her dad having her around, and initially, so these days she just sit beside her dad under the table, and sometimes she gets these words that are like falling off from the table, and she picks it up. And her dad is also very supportive person, I would say. Overall, very kind human, and a loving person overall. Like, he was a good husband, I would say. Like, until he dies, he would leave flowers for his wife. Then he was a very good person throughout that. I really liked him, this character. So he would talk to Esme, and they would have these moments to themselves, like where they play with words, like spelling their different definitions and everything. And every time they get a note or this word, they would discuss it. So it's very helpful for Esme's upbringing. And then sometimes she sees that this word's fallen off, and then slowly she is realizing that there are some lost words, and she keeps those words. And she grew up, and then later she starts working in the dictionary, like working in the scriptorium. And then, so as I mentioned, Pip Williams had done this extensive research, and this is from the archives. So the person who's sitting here is Sir John Murray, who took the initiative of publishing this dictionary. These are his two daughters, and these three are the people who works in the scriptorium at that time, that picture. And so these people are like real characters. So there is archive, there is photograph of them, everything. And Esme is a fictional character who comes into this. So this is a wonderful story, and this story is taking place in early 20th century, so 1880s, 1890s, and 1900s. So this time, uh, the women's suffrage movement is taking place. So Esme, growing up in this shell of like surrounded by all these lexicographers, basically men, the only women in her life were like the children of Sir Murray, who gets to get educated, and they come back and work with their dad. And then there is Esme's godmother, but she was living far away, so their communication is through letters, but she is a very significant character in this novel. So there are women, other women, as Esme grew up, she meets with, and there is one lady who is working for Murray family, but she is a friend, a caretaker, and everything to Esme. And then there are things that Esme encounters as she grew up, and she has her own life. Then many things happen, and the story ends with Esme's daughter, who grew up in Australia, recognizes the contributions to her of her mother towards this dictionary, and she is a professor who's working on this, and then she realizes that. So that is how their story ends. So this is very relatable to, I think, like, so the story, like, this all takes place in London, then it is in Australia, so the author's life is also kind of connected. So I really like this, how she weaved this story. It's very poetic, and I really liked it. So if you really like to read about words and all, a good recommendation. The second book I the first book I started reading in this year was The Grandest of Lives, Eye to Eye with Whales. So I got this book from the library. Excuse me. So this book is written by an I wouldn't call him a marine biologist, but he is a wildlife photographer, or like, documentary and all these things he does. And Douglas H. Chadwick. This book, I think, is published in 2006. So this is a little old book, but it's very interesting. I am so fond of whales, and so this book talks about the forms and lifestyles of these cetaceans worldwide. So he particularly talks about the humpbacks, the northern bottlenoses, then the blue whales, and then the minkies and the orcas. So taking these classes, 5 classes, from the perspective of natural history to a more personal observation, and you can see his admiration for these monsters. Like, these are the mammoth kind of mammals in sea, and sometimes reading this, I got goosebumps. So if you really like nature, wildlife, or marine mammals, or mammals, like their behaviors, everything, this is a good one. And he talks about like the groups that study a specific group, like specific group of whales. So the research groups that focuses on them, then how they find, how their travels are. And sometimes it's like they just go, and there would be days like when it is very adverse conditions in the sea, and there would be the calm days, and some days you spot the whales, sometimes you do not get to see them at all, and how they identify. And the interesting facts are like each whales have their unique pattern, so their fins, or like so everything about them is very unique, and you can identify each whale. So even in, like, let's say there are kind of blue whales, and then in a pod also, like you can specifically, there are some uniqueness about them. Maybe it's they got a scar mark, it could be from the childhood where they were attacked by orcas or something else, or these things. Like there are, so the people who study, the scientists who study them, they actually take pictures, and they, like the person who's studying them for years, they can recognize by seeing another picture of a different person took it and recently, and they can see, oh, this is that whale that I spotted years ago. And sometimes I have seen in YouTube, like where a researcher is saying that they rescued a whale once from a net or strangulation. Then later, this when they encountered the same whale and they went into the water, and the whale was so friendly with them. It's like the whale the whale still remember them, and that helped the whale got from this person. So like they are very like giant beings, right? But still they have, their brains are very intricate, and it has so much going on in there. Like if you see a orca pod, how they train the younger ones, how the matriarchy patterns happen every year. The humpbacks take their baby, like they come to a place for the breeding, and then once they give the birth, like they start they migrate to a different place, and like every day they are swimming like for real, like for miles. And this is so mind-blowing. And there is like a few times he talks about each group where they are like, sometimes there's like the mama whale and the baby whale are there, and the baby whales are very curious. So when the boat is there, so they just want to come around, touch it, and like so they want to see, they want to explore what's going on, who are these people looking at us, and all these things. And the mothers are very cautious, so they try to nudge them back away from this board. And so after some time of observation, they think, okay, it's okay, she will still be observing them in a distance, like in a safe distance, but she will let them play. And the baby whale is like playing around like swimming, coming back and forth. It's very, I think if I ever get a chance for whale watching, I would love it so much. Like that is one of my greatest wish to have it come true. Like I don't know how I feel. Maybe I'll cry. And then there was this moment where he said that when he went on a boat, there was a pregnant lady in that, and so the whale sounds, you must have heard them. So she was not very fond of whales, but she went for whale watching, and she felt the baby kick inside when the whale was singing. So the singing also, it's like like I really love that, and I really I'm admiring the people who get to study all of these things. And so sometimes they say that it's a question, are we watching them or are they watching us? Because sometimes the whales would just come around and like they would be looking at you directly into your eye, like they would be looking at you and see, like they're observing you. So who is studying whom? That question arises. I really like the way he put these things, and I would really like, I always like watching documentaries on marine life, and especially whales. And this book was very wonderful. So if you like these things, natural history and whales, or about marine organisms, please do read this book. It was a lovely time reading that. Now the third book I was reading was Bruna and Her Sisters in the Sleeping City by Alicia Yanez Cosio. She's an Ecuadorian poet and a novelist. So I have been doing some back reading, and mostly I have been relying on Wikipedia. That is the easiest source I can get. So this book has magical realism, and I like this book. Okay, so this book was written back in 1970s or 80s. So a long time ago, and in Ecuadorian, and she wrote it for a long time ago. She thought of publishing it as a collection of short stories. Even when I picked that book in the library, I thought it was a collection of short stories, but then I realized it is not. So this was written as in the title, Bruna, Soroche Los Chios, and in 1999, Kenneth J.A. Vishnia translated it into English, and then the book has been available around. So this book is about a girl, Bruna, who is exploring her identity and everything around her. So the interesting part about this novel is when Alicia wrote this, and she thought of sending it for a competition, and then the competition itself was cancelled, so she didn't submit it anywhere. She didn't publish it, and after some years she did submit it to another competition, and this book was sent, and this book, everyone liked it, the judges, so the jury awarded it the first prize. And I think it was after she read the 100 Years of Solitude, and she was more confident that okay, she has used this part of magical realism, and now there is like a book that is there. So she submitted it for the competition, and she won. So there were many people who were against that, so they complained that she copied the thing in 100 Years of Solitude. So there was this part of going like, mostly men were against it, like where women were like, wow, this is good work, but men were saying that okay, this is no. And in that scene, like in 80s, so she was very upset about that, and she wrote her more feminist novels. But in this novel also, Bruna, so she is from an Ecuadorian family. So her ancestor from the start, like it is Maria Iacatu. So she is a tribal woman, an American, Native American woman, and then she is married by a Portuguese or Spanish man. So he tries to erase her tribal roots. He orders her not to use her native words, to use his customs and dressings and traditions and everything, so to forget everything. So this thing has been adapted by her forthcoming generations, where even it started with a husband who portrays in a painting that his wife should be fair, not dark skinned as she is, because he didn't want that to be remembered. So this family has her portrait, and then her sons want to erase that history of being that cross bred, right, like between the Native American and Spanish. So they want to abandon that, and they want to like remove that Iacatu name, and then they take the name Catoville. And then it is Bruna, after a few generations down the line, she realizes, she understands, she from her caretaker Mama Chana, she learns the story of her great grandmother, and then she is like, okay, my surname is Iacatu. To all her relatives' disapproval, she's like announcing, this is my surname, this is my identity. She's trying to trace that, and they're like in each generation. So this story talks about multiple generations in that family, and they are living in a village, and it is a simile to the world. So I can read few excerpts from this book. So it goes as, the differences between the city and what lay beyond the mountains crowd out to be heard, but nobody listened. Sometimes the distance wasn't so great. An hour by plane was enough to reach another world. The city was unique, surrounded by snowy mountains and strange vapors. It had made itself inaccessible. The imposition of a brutal and unbridled colonization, congenital sadness, the search for the box of ideas amid the old and moth-eaten junk in the attics, eyes that were always squinting in order to look backward, had turned the inhabitants of the city into headless beings. Nevertheless, they felt secure because they had been told that in other parts of the planet people were being driven crazy with so much rushing around. They said that death was riding around on a motorcycle, hot on the motel's heels. They say an electrically powered train derailed and took 1,000 passengers with it. Sure, over there. Who told them they could try to replace an engineer's brain with a spark plug? Those are the consequences of the sin of materialism. So this is like, so there are many layers of subplots in this novel that is making it very lovely. If you really want to be engaged in a engage deeply in a book, this is your choice. And this deals with many things. So there is like the orthodoxical religious people, or the ones that say materialism is not good, and then there is Bruna who wants to embrace the modernism, and she wants to escape this house. So this is another a passage from this novel. Women had no education whatsoever. They weren't even allowed to glance at a book for fear they would become mannish. They could only come into contact with needles, brooms, and pots. When their thoughts dared to venture beyond the eaves of their rooftops, they caused a scandal, and they repressed themselves because they believed they were doing wrong. Only Bruna, after accepting her mixed race identity, manages to rebel against the city and its customs. And there is another passage. This was what Bruna inherited. A world of inverted values in which blood had no function other than to indicate skin color, and tears were nothing but salt water. Dignity and common sense were cast in stereotyped roles. It was difficult to become a complete human being, a sapiens sapiens, shaking off one prejudice after another that adhered to her bones like flesh. It was painful to have been born in the city and to go out into the world and see that things had different values and were in the way she had been taught or had learned, and then to have to start walking all over again and alone in the opposite direction when she thought she had almost arrived. Bruna was a product of fables, of legends, of time frozen like a puddle of dirty water, of sadness, of the seasons, of the mountains, but she kept searching for herself until she found herself. I really loved this book. I am out of words how to describe this, and maybe I was inexpressive for some time, so now it's very difficult for me to, form words to write or speak. So maybe with time I will get better at it. But this was a wonderful read. I would recommend anyone who wants to engage deeply into a book. It was simple in a sense, but it has so many layers that you have to give some thought. So if you really want to engage, into that book, then Bruna and her sisters in Sleeping City is a choice. The last book I read was maybe a scandalous book, but I won't call it scandalous because I really liked it. So there's this at the time should have been scandalous, I think. And this so I have been watching a lot of Korean and Chinese dramas. So there was a drama that I was watching, and the female lead in the drama was reading this book. So she had a quote from that book, and then like towards the finale of this series, and then it stayed with me, and I saw that the title was "Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit." It was really interesting, and I wanted to follow that. And in the library, I searched for it and I found the book. So this is the book, "Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit" by Janet Mendelson. It's a book written in 1985. It is semi-autobiographical. So this is one of the quote about this book. If Flannery O'Connor and Rita Mae Brown had collaborated on the coming out story of a young British girl in the 1960s, maybe they would have approached the quirky and subtle hilarity of Janet Mendelssohn's autobiographic first novel. That itself is enough for me to start reading this book. Mendelssohn's voice, with its idiosyncratic wit and sensitivity, is one you have never heard before. So I really wanted to read this. I read this, and so this is the story of Janet, who was adopted and brought up by her mother as one of God's elects. So she was supposed to be that, and she was very zealous and passionate about that, and she seemed destined for a life as a missionary. And suddenly she falls for one of her converts, and it is not a man. That changes the whole story. Then at the age of 16, she leaves everything. She leaves her house, she leaves her religion, and she comes out as a lesbian. So I was really looking forward. Like, I had this book for a while, I didn't get to start it yet, and in February I started it, and before that I was telling my friends that I'm really looking forward to read the coming out story of a woman in that age, like 1960s, how it would have been. And that too, she's coming from a very heavy religious background, how it would have been for her. So there is one passage, and with that I would be ending this video. It really resonated, the starting part and the ending, like the whole part. Like, this is the part, one of the sentences in here that is in the drama that hooked me up with this novel. But then this whole passage was very critical for me. My sins like a cloud hung over me. He blotted them out when he set me free. But where was God now, with heaven full of astronauts and the Lord overthrown? I miss God. I miss the company of someone utterly loyal. I still don't think of God as my betrayer. The servants of God, yes, but servants by their very nature betray. I miss God, who was my friend. I don't even know if God exists, but I do know that if God is your emotional role model, very few human relationships will match up to it. I have an idea that one day it might be possible. I thought once it had become possible, and that glimpse has set me wandering, trying to find the balance between earth and sky. If the servants hadn't rushed in and parted us, I might have been disappointed, might have snatched off the white samite to find a bowl of soup. As it is, I can't settle. I want someone who is fierce and will love me until death, and know that love is strong as death, and be on my side forever and ever. I want someone who will destroy and be destroyed by me. There are many forms of love and affection. Some people can spend their whole lives together without knowing each other's names. Naming is a difficult and time-consuming process. It concerns essences and it means power. But on the wild nights, who can call you home? Only the one who knows your name. Romantic love has been diluted into paperback form and has sold thousands and millions of copies. Somewhere it is still in the original, written on tablets of stone. I would cross seas and suffer sunstroke and give away all I have, but not for a man, because they want to be the destroyer and never the destroyed. That is why they are unfit for romantic love. There are exceptions, and I hope they are happy. The unknownness of my needs frightens me. I do not know how huge they are or how high they are. I only know that they are not being met. If you want to find out the circumference of an oil drop, you can use lycopodium powder. That's what I will find. A tub of lycopodium powder, and I will sprinkle it on to my needs and find out how large they are. Then when I meet someone, I can write up the experiment and show them what they have to take on. Except they might have a growth rate I can't measure, or they might mutate or even disappear. One thing I'm certain of, I do not want to be betrayed, but that's hard to say casually at the beginning of a relationship. It's not a word people use very often, which confuses me because there are different kinds of infidelity. But betrayal is betrayal wherever you find it. By betrayal, I mean promising to be on your side, then being on somebody else's. That's all. If you really want to read this, go find this book. Oranges are not the only fruit.